I came home and found my wife sitting on the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinets, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. My son stood over her, hands useless at his sides, saying he had no idea what had happened, that she just broke down. An hour later, after I sat alone in my office and opened the home security cameras, I learned exactly what had broken her, my own child's voice doing it piece by piece. What would you do if you were me? If you read this to the end, tell me honestly what you think I should have done. Maybe it will help another old fool like me see the truth a little sooner. My name is Daniel Harris. I'm 71 years old, a retired electrician from Ohio, husband of Linda for 48 years, father of one son, grandfather to one boy, who still calls me Grandpa without embarrassment. I'm the kind of man who spent most of his life on ladders and in crawl spaces, who saved every extra dollar and paid off his small 3-bedroom house brick by brick. I thought I'd done well by my family. I thought my son, Mark, knew that. I thought my wife was safe in the home we built together, until the day the cameras told me the truth. It started like any other Wednesday. I had a cardiology appointment in the morning. Nothing critical, just one of those, at your age we should keep an eye on it visits. Linda doesn't like hospitals, so she stayed home. Our son Mark had said he'd stop by with his wife Becca to bring her lunch while I was gone. "They're trying, Danny," Linda had said that morning while she folded my clean shirt. "You know how busy they are with the mortgage and Tyler's school and everything?" Busy. That was the word my generation learned to accept instead of, "we can't be bothered." I left around 10, kissed Linda's forehead, told her not to climb on any chairs while I was gone, and drove into town. The checkup was quick. Blood pressure, a lecture about salt, a new prescription that cost more than I thought it should. I stopped at the pharmacy, then at the grocery store because Linda had mentioned she was out of flour for her biscuits. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed Mark's SUV already parked out front. The sight warmed me for half a second. Maybe he'd come early, decided to spend some time with his mother. Maybe things were turning around between us. But when I opened the front door, the air in the house felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. "Linda?" I called. "Honey, I'm back." Her answer wasn't words. It was a sound, this broken, hiccuping sob that clawed its way down the hallway to me. I dropped the grocery bag on the console table and hurried toward the kitchen. She was on the floor, knees pulled up, hands pressed to her mouth like she was trying to keep herself from screaming. Her hair, usually so neatly brushed, hung in gray tangles around her face. Mark stood a few feet away, leaning against the counter. His face was arranged into what I suppose he thought was concern, but his eyes were dry and restless, darting towards the back door like he wanted to be anywhere but there. "What happened?" I asked, dropping to my knees beside Linda. My joints protested, but I didn't care. "Linda, are you hurt?" She shook her head, shoulders shaking. "Danny, I can't. Just take me away," she whispered. My heart clenched. "Away from what?" "I don't know, Dad," Mark cut in quickly. "I came in from the deck and found her like this. She just lost it. Maybe it's her memory again. Maybe it's time we talked about, options." "Options?" I repeated, stroking Linda's back. "We're talking about your mother, not a broken appliance." He straightened, crossing his arms. "I'm just saying this might be beyond what you can handle alone anymore." Linda flinched at his words like they were physical blows. Her fingers dug into my arm. "I'm fine," she rasped. "I'm not crazy. I'm not." I helped her to her feet and got her into a chair. Her hands were ice cold. I checked her arms, her legs, looking for any sign of a fall or an injury. Nothing, just the kind of shaking that comes from fear, not pain. "Maybe we should take you to the ER," I said quietly. She shook her head violently. "No hospitals. Please, not today." Mark exhaled, impatient. "She probably just had a panic attack. Becca and I need to pick up Tyler from school. Can you handle things, Dad? Can I handle my own wife? I snapped before I could stop myself. Yes, Mark, I think I can manage that much. His jaw tightened. I'm just trying to help. If this is your idea of help, I said, you can go. For a moment, I thought he might argue. Then he grabbed his keys off the hook, muttered something about me being ungrateful, and walked out. The front door shut too hard behind him, rattling the picture frames on the wall. I sat with Linda at the kitchen table for nearly an hour. She cried until she didn't have any tears left, just those silent, shaking breaths that made my chest ache in sympathy. Every time I gently asked what had happened, she only whispered, I can't talk about it, Danny. I just can't. It hurts too much. The doctor at the urgent care clinic later that afternoon called it an acute anxiety episode. He suggested therapy, maybe some mild medication. He talked about age-related vulnerability and family stressors. I nodded like a good patient, but my mind wasn't on the medical terms. Because while we waited in that little exam room, one thought kept circling in my head. Mark said he found her like that, but Linda kept flinching whenever she heard his name. By the time I tucked her into bed that evening, her favorite quilt pulled up to her chin, a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the nightstand, my gut was telling me something it had taken 71 years to learn. When words don't make sense, watch what people do, and I had a way to watch. 3 years earlier, after a rash of break-ins on our street, I'd installed cameras around the house. Nothing fancy. Just a couple in the living room, the kitchen, the front door, and the back deck. I'd told Linda it was for her safety when I was out on errands, and that was true. What I hadn't expected was that they would end up protecting us from someone inside, not outside. I closed the bedroom door softly behind me and walked down the hall to the small room we called my office. It was really just a converted bedroom with an old desk and a second-hand desktop computer. The camera system was hooked up there. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the distant murmur of the evening news from the bedroom. My heart beat too loudly in my ears as I woke the monitor and opened the footage from that day. The timestamp stared back at me in neat white numbers. Mark's SUV arriving at 11:42 a.m. The motion alert at the front door. The living room camera picking up their voices. I clicked play. Mark walked in first, phone in hand, Becca behind him with a takeout bag. "Mom?" he called. "We brought lunch." Linda appeared from the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She still moved a little slower since her hip replacement last year, but her smile was as bright as ever. "Well, aren't I spoiled today?" she said, taking the bag. "You shouldn't have. Where's Tyler?" "At school," Becca answered, setting her purse on my recliner. "We thought it'd be easier to talk without him around." Talk. I felt a cold thread wind its way through my stomach. I fast-forwarded. Small talk in the kitchen. Sandwiches on plates. Linda laughing at some joke I couldn't hear clearly. Normal. Ordinary. That might have been the last normal 40 minutes of my marriage. At 12:23 p.m., the tone shifted. It started with a single sentence from Becca. "So, Linda, did you think about what we talked about last time?" Linda paused with her sandwich halfway to her mouth. "About what, dear?" "About the house," Becca said, her voice flattening. "About putting it in our names now instead of later. For estate planning." My fingers tightened around the mouse. Linda set her sandwich down. "Oh, that." Mark stepped in. "Mom, we're not trying to pressure you, but it just makes sense. Dad's not getting any younger, and these medical bills are only going to get worse. If the house is in my name, we can protect it, maybe even use the equity to get a bigger place that fits everyone." Linda's hands folded around her glass of water. I could see the faint tremble in her fingers on the grainy screen. "This house is paid for," she said quietly. "Your father and I worked very hard for that. We wanted somewhere safe to grow old. We're not looking for bigger, just safe." Becca leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And we're offering you safe," she said. "We could move in, help take care of you both. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. But we need the paperwork to reflect reality. Probate is a nightmare, Linda." The way she said Linda instead of Mom made my skin crawl. Linda managed a small smile. "Danny already has everything arranged in his will. When the time comes, you'll have what you need." Mark exhaled sharply. "This isn't about your will, Mom. This is about now. Becca and I are drowning with the mortgage and daycare, and you and Dad are sitting on a house that's worth, what, 300 grand? 4? It's selfish not to use that." Selfish. I watched my wife's eyes fill, even as she blinked hard against it. "You want us to sign our home over?" she said slowly. "So you can pull money out of it?" "It's not like that," Becca said quickly. "We're all family. What's the difference if the deed has your name or Mark's name on it? You'll still live here." "For a while," Mark muttered. "What?" Linda asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Look, Mom, the bank wants a cosigner if we refinance. You and Dad have great credit. If the house is in our name, we can consolidate everything. It's smart." Linda shook her head. "No. No, Mark. I'm sorry, but no. Your father and I didn't break our backs all these years to end up homeless because of some loan gone wrong." Becca's smile vanished. Her mouth flattened into a hard line I hadn't seen before. "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "No one said anything about homeless. We're offering you security and you're acting like we're trying to rob you." Linda's shoulders squared. I recognized that posture. I'd seen it when she marched into my old boss's office to demand he pay me overtime he'd forgotten. "Are you?" she asked quietly. Becca's chair scraped back. She stood, palms pressing into the table. "You know what? Maybe you're not thinking clearly anymore. Mark, this is exactly what I was talking about. She gets confused, she forgets things. We need to get guardianship sorted before something happens and the state takes everything." Guardianship. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark rubbed his temples like the victim in all this. "Can we not do this like last time?" he said. "Mom, there's paperwork in my bag. Just look at it. It's standard stuff. Power of attorney. Healthcare proxy. If anything happens to you or Dad, we can step in. Otherwise, the hospital picks some stranger." He pulled a folder from his leather messenger bag and slid it across the table toward her. I paused the video and zoomed as much as the cheap camera allowed. On top of the stack was a deed transfer. Below it, something with legal language and my name printed in block letters. Power of attorney. They hadn't come to bring her lunch. They'd come to strip us piece by piece of the little security we'd earned. I hit play again. Linda didn't touch the folder. "I will not sign anything without talking to your father," she said. "You know that." Becca scoffed. "Oh, sure. Let's ask Daniel, the man who thinks streaming is something that only happens in rivers. He'll really understand complex legal documents." Mark laughed, actually laughed. My son. "We're trying to help you, Mom," he said. "Dad will just get paranoid and stubborn, like always. Do you want him to have a heart attack stressing over this?" My chest tightened. So that was the angle. My cardiologist, my prescriptions, my age, turned into weapons. Linda pushed the folder back toward him with one finger. "Your father is not your enemy," she said, voice shaking. "And I am not a child. I will not sign away my house behind his back. I won't." Becca's eyes flashed. "You know what's really selfish?" she spat. "Letting us struggle and scrape while you sit on all this. We can't even afford a decent vacation for Tyler. Eric's dad just got them a trip to Disney in a new SUV. What do we get? Lectures." Linda flinched at the comparison. She'd always hated it when parents turned love into a competition. "I'm sorry you're having a hard time," she said softly. We've helped when we could. But this is our roof, our safety. I won't give that away. Not for an SUV. Not for anyone. Mark stood up so fast his chair wobbled. Unbelievable, he snapped. You know what, Mom? Maybe Becca's right. Maybe you're not capable of making these decisions anymore. He walked around the table, looming over her. On the grainy footage, I could see how small she looked, shoulders hunched, hands gripping the edge of her chair. Mark, she whispered, sit down. You're scaring me. He leaned closer, his face inches from hers. If Dad drops dead tomorrow, he hissed, you'll be lost. The bank will eat you alive. We're offering to protect you, and you're too stubborn to see it. Maybe a judge will understand better than you do. Linda's hand jerked up to her chest. A judge? She repeated. You'd drag us to court? If we have to, Becca said. Elder services take this stuff very seriously, you know. We could tell them about your memory lapses, the time you left the stove on, the fall you lied about because you didn't want anyone to know. Linda's breath hitched. I told you that in confidence. So we could help, Becca said coldly. But you don't want help. You want to cling to control, even if it means your son's family gets crushed under debt. Mark slammed his hand on the table. Sign the papers. Linda jumped, chair scraping. Tears spilled over. No, she sobbed. I said no. Leave, please. Just leave. Mark grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to break, but hard enough that she cried out. Mom, stop making this difficult, he snarled. You will sign them. Today. You're not thinking clearly. I'm your son. I know what's best. She tried to pull away. The chair tipped. For a second that felt too long. The room on camera tilted, all skewed lines and flailing limbs. Then Linda went down hard, out of frame. The sound of her body hitting the floor made my stomach lurch. See what you did? Becca hissed. If she breaks a hip again, that's on you. On me. The two of them stared down at her. For a full 7 seconds, no one moved. Then Becca's voice came again, quiet and sharp. Get her settled before your dad gets home, she said. She looks pathetic like that. And for God's sake, get rid of the papers. Mark bent down, hauling Linda up under her arms like she was a sack of flour. Mom, stop crying, he said, tone suddenly soft, oily. You're going to make Dad worry for nothing. Just calm down. We'll talk about this some other time, okay? Linda's voice was barely audible, a broken whisper. Please don't tell Danny, she begged. Please don't tell him what you said. Mark glanced around the kitchen, eyes flicking past the exact cabinet where the camera sat, just inches above his line of sight. He won't hear it from me, he said. And then, God help me, he kissed her forehead. Try to pull yourself together before he gets back. You know how he is. The footage ended with him helping her into a chair, handing her a tissue, and then strolling back to the living room where he and Becca spent 10 minutes talking about a new grill they wanted, like they hadn't just shattered the woman who brought him into this world. I stared at the paused image until the pixels blurred. My hands shook so hard I almost knocked the mouse off the desk. My son. My only son. A man I'd held in my arms as an infant. The boy whose skinned knees I'd patched, whose science projects I'd stayed up late to help finish. The teenager I'd defended when the principal wanted to suspend him for fighting. The adult whose mortgage payments I'd quietly covered for the last 3 years when he hit a rough patch. And this was how he spoke to his mother when he thought no one was watching. For a long time, there was nothing in the office but the ticking of the cheap wall clock and the roar of my own heartbeat. Something inside me, something trusting and foolish, cracked wide open. But the worst part wasn't what he'd already done. It was what he was planning to do next. I rewound and checked the garage camera. At 11:17 a.m., before he'd even rung the doorbell, Mark had gone into the garage, opened my locked filing cabinet with a key he shouldn't have had, and taken photos of our property tax bills, my IRA statement, and the title to the house with his phone. He hadn't come over for lunch. He'd come for inventory. The rest of that night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the office, watching clip after clip. This wasn't the first time they'd pressured Linda. There had been comments, jokes about nursing homes with nice views, questions about our passwords, casual remarks about how complicated things would be after we were gone. I'd brushed them off as insensitive. My mistake. They weren't careless words. They were scouting missions, testing boundaries. By dawn, an idea had taken shape. Not out of spite, not at first, but out of something older and stronger. The need to protect the woman who had given me her whole life. If my own son wanted to treat us like assets on a balance sheet, then he could meet the man who'd quietly become very good at balancing those sheets. Because here's what Mark didn't know. He thought the house was everything. A modest 3-bedroom in a neighborhood that used to be working class until the developers moved in and drove the prices up. He knew we'd paid it off. He knew about my small pension and Social Security. He did not know about the company. 40 years ago, I'd helped my old boss start an electrical contracting business. I never talked much about the numbers. I just did the work, signed whatever they put in front of me. Turns out, one of those papers had made me a minority owner. When my boss died, his son bought most of the shares. Not all. The rest had sat quietly in my name, growing with every municipal contract and subdivision wiring job. 2 years ago, that son had decided to retire early. He didn't want to sell to an outsider. He offered me a deal, knowing I had some savings. Buy him out slowly, he'd carry the note. He trusted me. I'd wired his first crib. So while my son assumed I was a cash-poor pensioner clinging to one paid-off house, reality looked different. I owned the company's building outright, the inventory, and enough in liquid assets to live comfortably and then some. I also held the note on Mark's house. He'd come to me embarrassed 3 years earlier when the bank wouldn't refinance because of his credit. I'd agreed to pay off the bank and let him pay me back at a lower interest rate. We'd even gone through lawyers, drawn up a proper mortgage agreement between us. Family helping family, I'd said. Funny, he hadn't mentioned that when he talked about drowning in payments. By the time the sun peeked over the neighbor's roof, I'd made a list. Not out of vengeance, at least that's what I told myself then, but out of necessity. Protect Linda and the house. Ensure Mark can't use the courts to grab control of our lives. Make sure any lesson I taught him would stick. I started with the lawyer. "Daniel," Mr. Alvarez said when I walked into his office as soon as they opened. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." Last time I'd been there, it was to help a friend with his will. This time, it was my own. "I need to change a few things," I said, setting a flash drive on his desk. "And I need you to see something before you ask me if I'm sure." He watched the footage with a lawyer's face, a mask of professional detachment, only the tightening of his jaw betraying anything else. When it ended, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "This is elder abuse," he said quietly. "Emotional, financial, arguably physical." "That's my son," I replied, voice rough. "So no, we're not calling the police. Not yet. Not unless we have to. I just want to make sure he can't hurt Linda again, or take our home." We spent 3 hours redoing my will and Linda's. We created a living trust and put the house into it, with strict conditions. Neither Mark nor Becca could ever live there or use it as collateral. The beneficiary after we were both gone would be our grandson Tyler directly, with a trustee we both trusted, not Mark. We drafted new healthcare proxies naming my old friend John as primary, not Mark. We added a clause that specifically excluded Mark from any financial power over us under any circumstances. "Are you sure?" Alvarez asked more than once. "I watched him throw his mother to the floor," I said. "I'm sure." The second move was quieter, the kind of step only a man who reads the fine print and keeps his promises could take. I drove to the bank where the company's accounts lived. signed a few forms, moved money into a new account titled in the name of the trust. Then I called the loan servicing company that handled Mark's mortgage to me. "I'd like to exercise the acceleration clause," I said. "Yes, the one that allows me to call the loan due in full if there's evidence of fraud, abuse, or if I feel the asset is at risk." It was a clause I'd never expected to use. I'd put it there because Alvarez had insisted. "Just in case," he'd said. "In case my son turns into a stranger," I'd joked at the time. We both knew that wasn't funny now. "Is there a problem with the property?" the woman on the phone asked. "There's a problem with the borrower," I answered. "You'll have documentation by the end of the week." I wasn't going to leave Mark homeless. I'm not that man. But I was going to remind him that security can be taken away as easily as it's given. That afternoon, after Linda had napped and eaten and the color had returned to her cheeks, I sat on the edge of our bed and took her hand. "Linda," I said softly, "I saw the footage." Her eyes filled instantly. "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. "He was just upset, Danny. He didn't mean—" "He grabbed you," I interrupted gently. "He threatened court. He talked about guardianship like we're already gone. He called you confused. He called me an obstacle." She turned her face away, tears sliding into her hairline. "He's our boy," she said. "I carried him. I remember how his head smelled when he was a baby. How he cried when you went on those long shifts. I remember all of it," I said. "But I also remember what he did yesterday. Both are true." "I don't want to lose him," she choked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You already lost the version of him you think you're protecting." We sat in silence for a long time. At last she nodded, once, shaky but decisive. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Protect you," I answered. "Even if that means protecting you from him." 3 days later, I invited Mark and Becca over for dinner. "Just us," I said on the phone. "No Tyler this time. I need to talk to you like adults." He hesitated, then agreed. "Money does that. It makes people curious when they think it might be involved." Linda cooked his favorite pot roast, because even in her hurt, she is still a mother. She moved slower, but there was a firmness in her shoulders I hadn't seen since she went back to work after my layoff in '92. They arrived right on time, dressed a little nicer than usual. Becca had that church social smile fixed on her face, all teeth and no warmth. "Smells great, Mom," Mark said, kissing Linda's cheek like he hadn't made her sob on that same tile floor days earlier. I waited until after dinner, until plates were scraped and coffee poured. Then I placed a small stack of folders on the table. The color drained from Becca's face the moment she saw them. "What's all this?" Mark asked, trying for casual and landing somewhere closer to wary. "Estate planning," I said, watching their eyes sharpen. "Since you're so concerned about it." Becca forced a laugh. "Well, we're glad you're finally taking it seriously. It's not just about you, you know. It affects all of us." "Yes," I said, "it does." I opened the first folder and slid a copy toward them. "This is the deed transfer," I said. "The one you tried to get your mother to sign." Becca's hands jerked back like I'd pushed a snake across the table. "Where did you—" "The kitchen camera," I said calmly. "Along with audio from the living room and footage from the garage. I have copies stored in 3 places now. One with my lawyer, one with a safe deposit box, one with me." Mark's mouth opened, closed. You recorded us?" he stammered. "I recorded my own house," I corrected. "You happened to be in it." Linda sat very still beside me, her fingers laced so tightly her knuckles were white. "Dad, you're blowing this out of proportion," Mark began. "We were just talking through options. You know how Becca can get when she's passionate." "Passionate," I repeated, letting the words sit between us. "Is that what you call threatening guardianship? Calling your mother confused? Grabbing her hard enough to leave a bruise?" Linda's hand rose instinctively to her wrist, where yellow and purple still faintly bloomed beneath her sleeve. Mark's jaw clenched. That was an accident. She fell. The audio disagrees, I said. So does the video. But I didn't ask you here to argue about what we can all see with our own eyes. I pulled another folder from the stack and laid it on the table. This, I continued, is a copy of the new trust agreement. Effective immediately, the house no longer belongs to me and your mother as individuals. It belongs to the Harris Family Trust. Upon our deaths, it goes directly to Tyler, with John Miller as trustee. You and Becca have no claim to it. You cannot live here. You cannot borrow against it. You cannot use it as collateral. You cannot contest it, or your share of anything else we might have is forfeited automatically. That clause is ironclad, by the way. Alvarez is very good at his job. Becca's face turned a blotchy red. You can't do that, she blurted. I already did, I said. Mark's chair scraped as he half stood. Dad, come on. This is insane. Over one bad day? We're family. Family doesn't threaten to drag their parents into court to steal their house, I replied. Family doesn't call Adult Protective Services because they want a nicer SUV. Silence. Pure, heavy silence. How do you know about... Becca began, then cut herself off too late. I watched the whole thing, I said. Every word, every angle. I know more than I ever wanted to. You're punishing us, Mark said, voice shaking with anger now. You're overreacting and punishing us when we're just trying to get ahead. Do you know how hard it is out there right now? I work 60-hour weeks on construction sites while taking night classes, I said quietly. I know exactly how hard it can be, and I still didn't try to rip my parents' lives out from under them. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I slid the third folder across. This, I said, is a copy of your mortgage agreement with me. Section 8, subsection 3, the acceleration clause. Becca flipped it open, eyes scanning the page. In the event that the lender has reason to believe the borrower may put the asset at risk, or engages in fraudulent or abusive behavior toward the lender, she read aloud, voice growing faint. The lender may, at his sole discretion, call the loan due in full within 60 days. Her eyes snapped up. You wouldn't. I did, I said. Yesterday. The servicer will send you official notice within the week. You'll have 60 days to either refinance with a bank or sell the house and pay the loan off. After that, they begin foreclosure proceedings. Mark shot to his feet. You're kicking your own son out of his home? He shouted. You'd make your grandson homeless? Tyler is welcome here any time, I said. You are not. As for your house, I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm just no longer subsidizing your life while you scheme to take mine. His hands balled into fists. For a second, a flicker of something dangerous crossed his face, something that made Linda flinch and reach for my arm. You can't do this, he growled. You need us. Who's going to take care of you when you fall? When Mom gets worse? It was almost funny, the way he still thought he held that power. We've made other arrangements, I said calmly. Legally, medically, financially, you are not in those arrangements. Becca slammed her palm on the table. This is elder abuse, she snapped. We should call a lawyer. We should call APS. You're obviously not thinking clearly. Someone needs to step in before you give away everything to some stranger. Funny, I said. That's almost word for word what you said about us. Only difference is, I have evidence. High definition, time-stamped, audio-backed evidence of you coercing an elderly woman, berating her, grabbing her, trying to force her into signing away her home. Her mouth snapped shut. I folded my hands. Here's how this is going to work, I said. You will not step foot in this house again without an invitation. You will not contact your mother about money, property, or legal documents. If you attempt to file for guardianship or otherwise challenge our competence, Mr. Alvarez will file the footage with the court along with a petition for a protective order. He's already prepared it. All it needs is my signature. You'd drag your own son through court? Mark whispered. I would drag any man who hurt my wife through court, I answered. The fact that you're my son makes it worse, not better. Linda finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. Mark, she said. Why? He looked at her like a stranger, like he didn't recognize the woman who used to dance with him in the living room to old Motown records. You have so much, he said, and we have so little. It's not fair. You have your health, she replied. You have your family. You have a home you didn't earn alone. We started with nothing, and we would have given you everything gladly when it was time. You couldn't wait. That's what's not fair. Becca grabbed her purse, chair screeching back. We don't have to sit here and be insulted, she snapped. Come on, Mark. We'll let the lawyers deal with this. You're welcome to try, I said. Just remember, cameras don't lie. They left without another word, the slam of the front door echoing through the house like a final verdict. For 3 days, there was nothing. No calls, no texts. Linda moved through the house like a ghost, touching picture frames, straightening Tyler's drawings on the fridge, staring out the window as if she expected a small boy to walk up the path at any moment. On the 4th day, the phone rang. It was Tyler. Grandma? He asked, his voice small. Why can't we come over? Linda's eyes filled. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. Your daddy knows. After that call, I added one final clause to the trust. A fund earmarked for Tyler's education, accessible only when he turned 18, with a letter explaining why things had happened the way they did. I couldn't fix everything, but I could at least leave him the truth along with the money. 2 months later, Mark's house went on the market. The neighborhood gossip came to me before the official notice did. Have you heard? Mrs. Connolly from down the street whispered one afternoon as we both took out our trash. Your boy's moving. Something about the bank calling their note early. Terrible, these lenders. No mercy. I just nodded. At the closing, the loan was paid in full. Every penny I'd given him returned with interest. I moved that money into the trust, earmarked for Linda's care and Tyler's future. We didn't speak to Mark and Becca for a long time. Linda cried on his birthday, on Father's Day, on the 4th of July when she realized we wouldn't be seeing Tyler run around with sparklers in the yard like he used to. Did we go too far? She asked me once, late at night, when the house was dark and the oxygen machine by the bed hummed softly. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. He grabbed you, I said. He tried to take your home. He lied to your face and called it love. If a stranger had done that, would you ask that question? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. 6 months after that awful day in the kitchen, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Mark on the porch, alone. No Becca, no Tyler. He looked older, tired. Dad, he said, can I come in? Not without your mother's say-so, I answered. He swallowed. Mom? He called, voice breaking. Linda appeared in the hallway, a dish towel still in her hands. She stopped when she saw him, fingers tightening around the fabric. I'm sorry, he blurted, for that day, for the things I said, for what I tried to do. The house, the guardianship, all of it. I was scared. I was stupid. I listened to the wrong person. Tears slid down Linda's face. You listened to greed, she said. In yourself. He nodded. Yeah, he whispered. Yeah, I did. We let him in. We listened. Forgiveness is a slow thing, not a switch you flip. Trust, once broken, never fits quite the same way again. But the papers stayed as they were. The trust remained. The acceleration clause had done its work. My revenge, if you want to call it that, wasn't shouting or breaking things. It was ink and signatures and the quiet certainty that the next time my son thought about using us as leverage, he'd remember exactly how it felt when the ground was pulled out from under him instead. Sometimes, when I sit in my office now, Linda napping in her recliner in the next room, I pull up that old footage. Not to torture myself, but to remind myself of the moment the illusion finally shattered, and I chose my wife over my pride as a father. Maybe I went too far. Maybe I didn't go far enough. All I know is this. The day I came home and saw my wife on the floor sobbing. I lost a son I thought I knew, and the day I watched those cameras, I found the spine I thought old age had taken from me. So tell me honestly, was I wrong to cut my own child off to protect the woman who stood by me for 50 years, or would you have done exactly what I did?
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.